Hello, I'm Dr. Shawn DuBravac. We're here at CES, and I am joined by a phenomenal group of researchers. Brenna Sniderman, Diana Kearns-Manolatos, and Natasha Buckley, three brilliant minds at Deloitte. So excited to dive into research. I'm a researcher at heart, so I'm really excited to see what some of your big observations were for CES from the lens of a researcher.
Sure. First off, thanks for chatting with us. I completely agree. I think it's been fantastic. There's been so much to see. I think one of the things that sets the Center for Integrated Research apart is that we look at cross-industry trends. And we focus on the workforce, we focus on sustainability, technology, trust, a whole host of things. And so much of what we're seeing here just is applicable to all of those things. And so I've just been fascinated in looking at all of the different technologies that can be used across all of those different areas. It's been great.
Let's dive into some of those topics. So when you think about sustainability, are there topics related to sustainability that really rise to the surface? Where do you see the intersection between research and sustainability playing out here at CES?
I think a couple, and then I'll turn it over to the group as well. There were a couple of examples, one being using technology to make desert soil fertile. So something that could used to take 7 years can now theoretically take 7 days. Lots of examples of lots lower emissions in automobiles and planes. Those were two that really stood out for me.
Another one I saw, the water filtration system. Being able to take even seawater and filter it and make it drinkable has tremendous impact and potential.
Yeah, and one of the really standout ones for me was seeing a very large digital twin of the Earth as well as Mars, where we're able to look at real-time weather patterns. And so a lot of potential applications for businesses thinking about sustainability, natural disasters, areas that could be impacted. So that was really very valuable.
Yeah, I think one of the things you highlight in that comment is how important all of this data and all of this, what many of us might consider kind of basic research as it starts to bubble up and become viable, becomes impactful to every organization, even if they're not necessarily in that domain. One of the reasons I think it's so important to be paying attention to events like CES, because you get to see what's happening across the way, and obviously, reading and consuming research outside of your domain, because you never know when it's going to start to really impact your industry, your business, and ultimately what you're trying to do. Thinking about future of work and what the workforce looks like, there are a lot of technologies on the show floor that talk about how work might evolve over time. Clearly, we see AI and other things changing how the individual might work, but it doesn't end there. Are there other examples that you saw from the show floor as it speaks to the future of work and what the future of the workforce should be thinking about?
I mean, I saw a lot about agentic AI, which I thought was very interesting, ways to assist the workforce in doing things so that they can sort of lighten their cognitive load and do more difficult things, ways to help them with planning processes, ways to help them with doing certain tasks. I think that's something we'll see a lot more of in the coming year, and I'd love to hear what you guys think.
The translation capability too, the Gen AI, creating your own persona, and then being able to present in 120 different languages, I think, was very powerful too, and could be incredibly useful across many industries.
Absolutely. And then I saw a lot to do with the transformation of physical spaces. There was a lot on the smart home, but if we think about how connected technology can be transferable, we can start to imagine, smart work from home, smart workplaces. And what really stood out to me about the smart home was it's not just humans running the technology. It's now AI getting to the point where through connected devices, we get contextual information about the spaces that we're working in so that we can start to personalize those spaces based on patterns of human behavior. So that has so many applications across industries.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me to build on that. I think it also enables organizations to individualize at scale, which is something that has traditionally been pretty difficult to do. So if there are ways that we can create environments for people to do their best work more easily, or environments that use less energy to do so to get back to the sustainability, or even environments that can take information about a group of workers and sort of apply those patterns to predicting how they can better serve them in the future, that's one interesting thing.
I think it's a great point, Brennan, because we talk so much about personalization and customization and using AI to create a market of one. But from a workforce perspective, it's also about creating an environment where everybody can work in the ways that they want to work, using the technologies that they want to use, and then scaling that across a workforce, is really incredible.
In our research, when we study particularly around neurodiversity and how people think and learn differently, those environments can be really helpful, those sensory environments and the AI being able to understand how you best, operate and anxiety levels, for example, or stress levels, and being able to adjust lighting to account for that and to help you do your best is really a great opportunity for everybody.
Yeah, lighting, temperature, different types of personalization. Facial and emotional recognition, too, was a big part of, I think, what was really exciting to see there, whether it's through the automotive dashboard or through some of the edge AI types of capabilities through cameras that we saw as well.
So, Shawn, we don't want to leave you out. What did you think was the most exciting thing that you've seen?
Well, you definitely hit on a lot of them. I mean, I think you mentioned, Diana, edge AI, and there's so much happening there at the edge as sensors become less expensive, as computing power becomes less expensive and more readily available. You can really start to use AI in all of these places that we never thought about using AI. I think this year at CES, we really saw generative AI moving to the forefront. And so I was pretty excited about seeing some practical applications of generative AI. So many of us think of generative AI more narrowly, as in maybe image creation or obviously text creation, but we see where it can help personalize and customize an environment. You mentioned about the need for neurodiversity in a workplace, and generative AI could easily play a role there, adjusting some of those environmental dynamics, lighting or other things, temperature. So having all of that. And then also, for me, it's been really interesting to see where we're capturing data and where we want that data to flow. So I've talked for a long time about the shift from digitization to datification, and you're starting to see us pull data from different sources, stir it up, and figure out, are there new solutions that we can come up with? So you see it happening in the home, you see it happening in the vehicle, you see it happening in different sectors like healthcare or in agriculture. It's pretty exciting for me to see how data is informing all of these different environments.
Yeah. And just, as data grows, there's always a security issue that comes with that. So I think we were talking earlier about how some of the digital watermarking capabilities is something that I found to be really interesting at the nexus of data and cybersecurity to
And IP.
and intellectual property, to really be able to have asset provenance of, in other words, tracking across the whole life cycle of the data, where and how it's used.
And adding credibility to a person's work or a scientist's work, or ensuring that their data and their knowledge is protected and not leaked.
Yeah. And there's so many applications, I think, for something like digital watermarking, to your point, to add a trust to something,
Exactly.
For IP, for helping to spur innovation because something's not going to be stolen. So for me, I think one of the really interesting things as someone who thinks in an integrated way across multiple topics is looking at a lot of this technology, the way it's currently being used versus how it will wind up being used in the future might not be the same. And so are there any things you've seen that you think could have applications beyond how they're currently being shown here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great point that you bring up, is that this idea that technology comes to CES in one form, and then we see iteration and innovation, and the economics start to shift, to change, as you start to see it show up in other places. I think you see that playing out in lots of different spaces. We think about cabin sensing inside of a vehicle. We've been so focused on the sensors outside the vehicle. Now we're starting to focus on the sensors inside the vehicle. We might be looking at whether they're present or not. We can start to look at also, as you mentioned, Diana, their stress levels or some of these other things. And so then you can really start to customize that environment in ways that was never perhaps ever intended. So I like to think about, how would I want that personalized and customized based upon anxiety, stress, depression, maybe how I route myself home at night starts to evolve and change. And so some of these things that are so programmatic in our lives, that are optimized on narrow parameters moving us from point A to point B, can really start to become richer, I think. And each day could be a little different based upon our moods or our desires for that day. Some things that we don't even observe, but that we're able to pick up from all the sensing technology that is now present. So,
well, I can say as a parent whose children are about to get their learner's permit, I would love to see it check my anxiety while I'm sitting alongside them in the car.
Well, and all of those in-cabin sensors and things like that, to talk about how those technologies apply to other industries, I saw very similar things happening with hotels and hospitality. Remembering your preferences so that when you go to a hotel the next time, the room automatically has the temperature that you prefer. The lighting is how you like it. Maybe they're playing music that you like instead of something generic on the TV. So that customization of spaces, I think there's that transferability of technology. Same technology, different environment.
You can even see like healthcare implications for that as well, for people who are in a care facility, just knowing when they go from place to place, what sort of environment they need.
And from a trust perspective, it shows that the company cares about their customers and wants to be able to provide the right environment and the right service for them.
Yeah. And there's so many things that we decide every day that we often don't even think about. Things like when we get in the shower, how hot to make it versus how cold to make it. And probably all of us have experienced needing to adjust that. We want it a little hotter, we want it a little colder. But if that was digitized and sensorized and started to know our preferences, then every day that shower could warm up to the exact temperature that we want. Or you mentioned in that healthcare setting, talking about AI, virtual avatars, you could have a duplicate of the doctor that you're going to meet with show up on the screens in that hospital room. So when the patient's there, they're anxious, they're nervous, they're able to see a familiar face. Maybe they're talking in their native language if they don't speak the same language that the physician speaks, making them feel a little more comfortable. So there's so many things that we're seeing around really customizing, personalizing, again, that environment to help make the individual feel more at home, but also to make them really feel seen.
Yeah.
And the fact that all of these innovations really apply across industries, I mean, I think every industry has something to learn here. And it's consumer business as well as B2B, business to business too. So a really great opportunity for companies to look and understand what else is happening on the edge that might not initially appear to be applicable in their business, but lo and behold, with some good ideas and open thinking, could Natasha something.
I mean, I think that's exactly right, Natasha. I think it's one of the reasons people come to CES to see all of the innovation that's happening outside of their domains. And I think it's also one of the key reasons why executives should be reading research. I mean, I'm biased, obviously. I love research. But understanding not just what's happening in your industry, your specific business unit, but really seeing what's happening outside of your domain, so you can really understand, A, is this adjacent to us? Is this going to impact us? Or is this something that's far away that we should maybe be thinking about pulling into our industry?
Yeah. Or what are some lessons learned here that we could take to
And how these different technologies connect with one another. So not thinking about them in silos. I mean, biometrics was another thing that I saw here that was pretty interesting. And you need to be thinking about that as you look at some of this new hardware that's out there on the floor. How are you getting access and security?
Privacy is incredibly important across all of these areas as well.
Yeah, and ultimately that, as was already mentioned, drives trust. And in order to drive adoption, we need to drive trust. Technology moves fast, but we know that society and adoption are much slower. And so you need to develop that trust and that reassurance that the technology are not only going to work, but they're going to solve real meaningful problems for the end user. I could talk about these things all day. I'm super excited to see everything that the Center for Integrated Research has coming out. Thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. And for more on what the Center for Integrated Research is doing at Deloitte, definitely check out Deloitte Insights.